That may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
Okay, so we're going to go through and we are going to be looking at some of these players that have been unbelievably disappointing in Dynasty and essentially saying, is it worth holding on to them? Should we just be selling for whatever we could get? And I want to put a massive asterisk on this video that none of these players are sell highs. None of these guys are, okay, yeah, they saw a big jump in value this month. Let's go through, let's cash out. Let's try to get a longer term. No, I mean, that's not what it is at all. I'm going to be talking about players that have lost a tremendous amount of value. If I think that there is an opportunity to maybe buy low, or if we should just be washing our hands and selling for almost whatever we could get. But of course, before we dive into it, make sure you go down there, drop that like, leave a comment letting me know anything that I said in this video was stupid. Trust me, I say stupid stuff in every single video that I've ever recorded. So please feel free to let me know that down there in the comment section. Also, subscribe to the channel only if you play Dynasty Fantasy Football. If you do not play Dynasty, I promise you this is not the channel for you. This is going to be the only thing that we discuss on this channel. And of course, you can find our Dynasty rankings over there on Patreon. You can get into a Dynasty league with us on Patreon. You can go find our Dynasty group chat. I mean, there's a ton of great stuff happening there, ton of great conversations. You get an in-depth podcast breaking down your Dynasty team when you join, get a Fantasy Flock Network hat as well. So please make sure you consider joining the flock. And let's go through, let's talk about these players. Let's lead it off with, dear God, Zach Wilson. Okay, so with Zach Wilson here, I mean, reports coming out saying, yeah, he's healthy and Mike White's going to start. And with Wilson, I'm not going to lie, I thought that he was a safe asset to be investing into coming into this season. Now, of course, with these rookies, it's always very hard to know exactly what we should be expecting with their actual talent profile. But, you know, essentially the boxes that we are looking for with a rookie quarterback coming in from a Dynasty Fantasy Football perspective. If you read our Dynasty draft guide that we get every offseason for the people on Patreon, you already know this. But yeah, let's go through and let's look at those boxes, because one thing that I hate, and I hate so much about fantasy football players, Dynasty players in particular, is the fact that people get so arrogant with their ability to come out and evaluate these prospects as quarterbacks, which is unbelievable to think of, just knowing that NFL teams get it wrong time and time again. And NFL teams, if you think about it, they're signing these quarterbacks to contracts that are worth millions and millions of dollars. I mean, a quarterback draft pick, if it's going to be in the top 5, that probably has a trickling of down effect to be worth hundreds of millions of dollars to your franchise. And someone like myself, who's just sitting here on a computer, like if I'm going to come out here and try to pretend like I know way more about who the 49ers should be taking out at 3 other than Kyle Shanahan, I mean, are we really doing that? You see the Dynasty community getting it wrong time and time again. Who did the Dynasty community think was the most overdrafted player in the 2018 draft class at the quarterback position? Josh Allen. Who did the Dynasty community think was the most underdrafted player in that 2018 draft class? And this is universal. You turn on any podcast, and I promise you, everybody had the same exact opinion. If you did not have this opinion, you were called an idiot. Josh Rosen was the best value. Josh Allen was the horrendous draft pick. Same thing in 2019. Who was the best value? 2019, the best value was Dwayne Haskins. Oh my God, how did Washington get Haskins in the middle of first? The worst draft pick, Daniel Jones. I mean, and this is, of course, from what the Dynasty community thought at the time. Now, I would argue Daniel Jones, obviously, I mean, you can make an argument that he was a bad draft. Nonetheless, I mean, the point kind of remains. Here was Zach Wilson. When we're evaluating these quarterbacks coming into the NFL draft, I mean, I am not going to be arrogant about it at all. What we are going to be looking at is historically what the level of team investment into that quarterback means with their job security going forward. And with Zach Wilson, the reason that we said that he was a safe asset to be investing into in a Dynasty Superflex league was given the fact that if you go through, if you look at the past 15 years, essentially, any quarterback that is drafted in the top 3, it does not matter how bad they are early on in their careers. It doesn't matter if they are Sam Darnold. It doesn't matter if they are Marcus Mariota. It doesn't matter if they're Jameis Winston, Blake Bortles, Mitchell Trubisky. All those options, because they have so much committed to them by their NFL teams, they are getting a solid 4 years to start every single time. I mean, they have the longest leash possible because that team already made that massive investment. However, when those quarterbacks fall to the middle of the first round, it's a completely different story. I mean, look at Josh Rosen, look at Dwayne Haskins as recent examples of when those quarterbacks go in the middle of the first round instead and they flame out. I mean, the team's not going to be holding on to them that long. They'll just go through, they'll move on. I mean, we can look at Paxton Lynch going at the end of the first. I mean, Jordan Love going at the end of the first as well. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I liked Love in Dynasty. I thought that he was a good value for his long-term upside. But nonetheless, the level of job security that you get from being a top 3 NFL draft pick at the quarterback position is massive from a dynasty fantasy football context. You also have to evaluate the situation that they're going into and also what they give you as a rusher, because of course it's not as simple as just going, okay, Lawrence was picked at 1, Zach Wilson was picked at 2, Trey Lance was picked at 3. That's how we have them ranked. Of course, that's not how you have them ranked. There are a lot of other variables going into it, but nonetheless, I think we definitely need to be looking at that investment that Zach Wilson got as the 2nd pick overall in this draft class and understand he is guaranteed to start in 2022. He is guaranteed to start in 2023. I mean, based on what we have historically seen over the past 15 years. So at this time, while Zach Wilson has been unbelievably disappointing, so far with Zach Wilson, he's had 181 pass attempts and 1,100 passing yards. Like, let me go through and let's pull up Pro Football Reference and we can go and just look at the adjusted yards per attempt and see where he ranks up. So if you're looking at Zach Wilson with the adjusted yards per attempt he has had so far this season, he's the quarterback 33 with 4.7 adjusted yards per attempt. That is behind Jacoby Brissett, who's at 5.2. That's behind Sam Darnold at 5.3. That's behind Davis Mills at 5.4. Zach Wilson, you can make an argument that he has been the worst starting quarterback at this time throughout the entire 2021 season. Now, with that being said, of course, if we could go through and just reset the clock, trade away Zach Wilson for a 2022 future first-round pick in a super flex league, we're going to do that without hesitating. But I think that's probably not going to be what you can do. I think instead, Zach Wilson's probably only going to be fetching you a 2nd and a 3rd. And for that price point, given the level of job security that he has, I think maybe we just have to wait a little bit longer with Zach Wilson. We know that the New York Jets will definitely be willing to get rid of their coaching staff before they'll be willing to get rid of that quarterback. So I'd love to know your opinion. I think that obviously with Wilson, he's been the most disappointing quarterback, from the most disappointing player, I would say, period, from this rookie class. But at this point, we're just going to have to look to most likely hold unless you can cash out for a first, because I'm not going to be selling a starting quarterback for a 2nd-round pick that's currently 22 years old. Now, our next quarterback, however, I actually think we can get a nice return for, and I would sell for a 1st-round pick right now in that 12-team Superflex League, Justin Fields. Now, y'all know with Justin Fields, we came through and we talked about him nonstop being an overrated player from the Dynasty fantasy football community in this draft class. We talked at length about how the Dynasty community was overconfident with the ability to project Justin Fields going to the NFL. We knew that Justin Fields had the best wide receiver duo in college, in all of college football at Ohio State. Justin Fields has come out, right now, 5.4 adjusted yards per pass attempt. He has been 2-5 as a starting quarterback so far his rookie season. Now, I'll say Justin Fields definitely going to have a very safe job in 2022 as well, but going back to what we have historically seen from these starting quarterbacks and where they're getting drafted in the NFL draft, and it really mattering when they have the worst case scenario, when they come out and they're as disappointing as Justin Fields, when they're as disappointing as Trevor Lawrence, when they're as disappointing as Zach Wilson, where they got drafted, and that level of team investment matters a ton here. Justin Fields just simply doesn't have that level of investment if you're looking at the overall draft pick. However, this is a player that the Chicago Bears traded up to get. They gave up that future 1st-round pick to give up Justin Fields. So now we have to be looking at a scenario where we obviously know that this team probably going to be letting go of Matt Nagy this upcoming offseason. And I know a lot of people are just going to be assuming, okay, well, that fixes the situation with Justin Fields right now. That fixes the Justin Fields situation. You get Nagy out of here, then he's going to be a completely different quarterback. Or if you historically look, when those rookie quarterbacks fail and then the coaching staff leaves the next year, it's not like it just gets fixed all of a sudden. Now, yes, of course, based on the level of investment that this team has in Justin Fields and how their future is tied up to Fields himself, they're going to have to get rid of Nagy. They're going to have to make the bet on Fields. I think that people in Dynasty in particular are going to be a little bit, at least maybe this is what I have found based on the comment section. Maybe this is what I found based on talking to people on Patreon. I think people are a lot more willing to give the pass to Justin Fields. And I will say over the past month, it's looked very different from what you're getting as a rushing quarterback, because with Justin Fields, if he can get to about 50 rushing yards a game, as he has been at about 60 rushing yards a game over the past month, it doesn't matter what he is going to be as a real life NFL pocket passer. It doesn't matter. He can be Jalen Hurts. He can come out. I mean, he's had 20 fantasy points over the past 2 weeks against the 49ers and against the Pittsburgh Steelers. So if he can get to that level of rushing production where he's getting you 60 rushing yards a game, I'm fine if you want to hold on to Justin Fields. It's just hard to guarantee that we are going to be getting that, because I know a lot of people want to say, oh, Nagy's not letting him run. They're calling design run plays for him. I don't know what y'all are watching. I'm watching Justin Fields go with the read option and running, and just obviously he was running by the second he dropped back and then sliding down to pick up an extra 4 yards. Like, he's going and he's rushing the football. Now, if you think that he can get up to the 60 rushing yards a game, I'm fine with us holding him. But if we're looking at a season-long standpoint, I mean, a lot of those games that he started at the beginning of the year, I mean, gets the Browns 12 rushing yards, the Lions 9 rushing yards, the Raiders 4 rushing yards. I think it's hard to assume that he is going to be the Jalen Hurts, that he's going to be Lamar Jackson. Instead, I would be looking to sell Justin Fields. Like, if we could go through, and y'all know what we talked about every single video, every single live stream, the entire offseason at length, was to draft Trey Lance everywhere you could. I mean, with Trey Lance, like, if we could trade Justin Fields, and I would have done this before the season, but I think more people would probably agree at this point, I would add on to Justin Fields to pivot over to Trey Lance. And now with Lance has looked bad in his limited opportunities that he has had in San Francisco. Now, keep in mind, I mean, I loved Lance coming into the season, but not because I pretend to be some expert quarterback scout. Anybody that's trying to pretend that, whether they have an Apple podcast, a YouTube show, or anything, if they're trying to sit here and go, okay, here's the film, blah, blah, they're lying to you. They can't do that, okay? It's the hardest thing to ever do. But from a fantasy football context, Trey Lance checked every single box. We knew that he was going to be a fantastic rusher the second that he gets onto the field, which directly translates to a ton of fantasy production. We know that he's going to be stepping into a fantastic situation in San Francisco with a great head coach and a great supporting cast with Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle, and a great offensive line. And with Trey Lance, going back to what we were talking about with Zach Wilson, he has the level of job security by being a top 3 NFL draft pick, and the fact that this team traded the 12th pick and 2 future firsts to go get Trey Lance, that he is guaranteed to be the starting quarterback here for the 49ers for the next 4 years. So with Lance, I know this is also a player that, I mean, there's no better buy in Dynasty Fantasy Football right now. Like, I would be so confident in going and just giving the farm for Trey Lance. I am ranking him most likely, if you're talking about a super flex asset, as a late first round pick. A late first round pick, beginning of the second round, because how I'm viewing him is he's just Lamar Jackson. Like, worst case scenario, like with Trey Lance here, yes, I mean, he was very disappointing his one start. He only throws the ball for 192 passing yards. No George Kittle in this game. I think Kittle's actually the most important player for this 49ers offense that's not at the quarterback position. He had 192 passing yards in a very tough matchup against the Arizona Cardinals. No touchdowns at all. Yet, he was still a low-end quarterback one in this game. How is that possible? Because 89 rushing yards, 16 rushing attempts. This is what you saw in college with Trey Lance being a way better rushing option than Justin Fields. Lance can only get better for here once they design the offense for him. Hopefully we get him later on in the season. I was wrong. I was 100% assuming that Lance would be starting by now. He's had a couple minor injuries. We can't blame the injuries with his lack of being the starting quarterback in San Francisco. Not trying to make any excuses here at all. But what we are saying is the limited experience that we've had with Trey Lance, even though he disappointed from a real life NFL standpoint, he still showed us that he has that flash of that elite ceiling in fantasy football. He has the job security that I think Justin Fields doesn't, if we're talking about the long term as well. Like, go through, if we can trade like Justin Fields I would trade Justin Fields in a first for Trey Lance in a second. Like, I would go through and I'd make that trade right now. We talked about this so many times this offseason that I think that we continue to want to just be hammering that in. And now, you know what? I was actually going to talk about a bunch of wide receivers on this video as well, but it looks like we're running out of time. You know, once we get started on Trey Lance, once we get started about Justin Fields, I want to be talking about him a ton. Well, instead, let's talk about Trevor Lawrence here for a little bit and what we have seen with Trevor Lawrence, and if we should just be buying the dip or we should be washing our hands off. And to recap right now, you have to hold Zach Wilson because you're not getting anything. I think we can look to sell Justin Fields because with Fields, I know that with how many people, I mean, I tweeted out that Justin Fields was essentially bad, and I had replies underneath going like, oh my God, look at Josh Allen, his rookie season. I'm like, are you really trying to make that comparison? Justin Fields is way closer to Dwayne Haskins with what his rest of career will look like compared to Josh Allen. Nonetheless, I mean, I think that you can still get a ton for Justin Fields right now, which is why Justin Fields is going to be a sell. Trey Lance is the best buy low that you could ever talk about at the quarterback position based on the rushing upside that we saw him have. Now with Trevor Lawrence, this is also going to be a scenario where you're really just hoping that Urban Meyer's not here next year. And just like what we were talking about with Justin Fields and Matt Nagy, I mean, that's not going to fix everything for this Jacksonville Jaguars team. Obviously, this Jacksonville Jaguars organization has just been inept for a very long time. And yeah, you're looking at Trevor Lawrence, and the underlying numbers with Lawrence also very, very bad. I'm going back to adjusted yards per pass. Adjusted yards per pass, I think, is the easiest way for us to get a good feel of quarterback talent. And of course, you have to bake into so many different things. It's like using yards per carry to evaluate running backs. It's unfair to do based on how much goes into that one single statistic in regards of offensive line plays, skill positionals, players around them, as well as what the coaching staff is providing for this quarterback. So yeah, Lawrence has been placed into a very bad situation. But I don't think there's an easy path for this situation to get much better anytime soon. And with Trevor Lawrence, he's had a 5.3 adjusted yards per pass attempt, which I love that stat because with adjusted yards per pass attempt, it's a yards per pass attempt, but they also give you a bonus for touchdowns, and they also take away points essentially for interceptions. I mean, right now he's only ahead of the season out of quarterbacks that have had a decent amount of pass attempts, only ahead of Jacoby Brissett and Zach Wilson, currently tied with Sam Darnold, behind Fields, behind Davis Mills, behind Tua Tagovailoa, behind Jared Goff, behind Taylor Heineke. With Trevor Lawrence, this is someone that I think that I would have never assumed it was this bad. I thought that Urban Meyer, yes, was stupid coming into the season based on the offseason moves that we had seen him make. But nonetheless, I thought that Trevor Lawrence would be able to overcome it based on the fact that everybody's been talking about Trevor Lawrence to be the next Andrew Luck for the past 4 years since he was coming out of high school. Now, talking about how this situation can get better going forward, obviously a changing coaching staff. And also this team will have a very high draft pick. It kind of does suck that they win this past week against the Buffalo Bills. I mean, you kind of want this team to be getting a top 3 pick, even if a quarterback's going to be selected with that pick. They can trade that away in a very similar deal to what we actually had last season with the 49ers trading that 3 first-round pick package up to 3rd overall to the Miami Dolphins so they can get Trey Lance. Kind of hoping that we get something like that for the Jacksonville Jaguars because this team just needs to be completely overhauled. I will say with Trevor Lawrence, he has been slightly appealing. Like the difference between Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields as a rushing quarterback hasn't been massive. Where Trevor Lawrence, I mean, we have seen him 21 rushing yards, 27, 36, 28. It's not consistent. He's definitely trailed off as of late, especially against the Seattle Seahawks and the Buffalo Bills. I think with Lawrence, though, this will be someone that you can bank on getting to possibly 300 rushing yards a season. I think he will have a couple of rushing touchdowns as well. I think that based on the talent profile that he had coming in and how everybody's viewing him as a can't-miss prospect, and he has such a high floor and that you know Jacksonville will not move on from Trevor Lawrence throughout his entire rookie contract, I think that I would most likely be buying the dip on Trevor Lawrence. But the issue is at the same time, while it's easy for me to come out here and to say buy the dip on Lawrence, in reality, it's going to be really hard for you to go through and actually be able to see that massive price dip because a lot of people who own Lawrence, like, are they really looking to sell right now? I don't think so. But if you could, I would definitely, at least if you have Lawrence, be looking to hold. Now, one quarterback I really want to discuss, Tua Tagovailoa. With Tua here, I think we cut bait. With Tua, this is a quarterback that going back in that 2020 class, I mean, I actually was willing to make excuses for him. I was saying that with Tua, his rookie season with the hip injury, that this was a quarterback that we just wanted to be betting on in the long haul, even though I didn't like him as a rookie coming in because he wasn't really going to show us that he had any rushing upside. And at the same time, with Tua Tagovailoa, a lot of people are just putting him in a much higher range than Justin Herbert. And I was saying, are we really that confident that we can evaluate these quarterbacks coming into the NFL draft? You know that I'm of the opinion that we can't. So with Tua Tagovailoa not having a ton of rushing upside either, I just wanted to go through. I just wanted to see if we could pivot off. We got Justin Herbert in a lot of leagues. I mean, at the beginning of the second round in super flex drafts where Tua was a top 5 pick overall. And with Tua, I think this is about the time where maybe we could go through, maybe we could look to sell because yet again, he disappoints this season. And I mean, 6.1 adjusted yards per pass attempt. And if you're looking at Miami, they are stockpiled with assets going forward. Where I think Tua Tagovailoa, I mean, especially if they just have a change with their coaching staff, maybe they're not going to be tied to this quarterback. Obviously, you had the rumors with Deshaun Watson. Everybody knows about that. But I think Tua Tagovailoa could be very similar to what we saw with someone like, I hate to say it, Josh Rosen, where maybe this Dolphins team just doesn't necessarily have the level of team investment. And at the same time, when you're seeing that they have so many assets that they can turn into a quarterback in the NFL draft upcoming, obviously, they're not going to be looking at someone like Kyler Murray, but nonetheless, they'll have a lot of those first round picks. I mean, it's not like San Francisco right now has a great record or anything. Like if we're looking at the standings, and obviously San Francisco went through and they shipped that first round pick over to Miami. I really hope we're not embarrassing ourselves. I hope that first round pick was not included in the trade up for Jalen Waddle. Nonetheless, Miami right now 2-7, and at the same time, you're looking at the 49ers 3-5. I think that they're going to have ammo to go through, get a quarterback. Maybe that's through trade in the offseason with Sean Watson. I just think Tua, even if he is able to come out and he's able to be productive at the quarterback position and he keeps the job, what's the ceiling that he can't rush? Is he Baker Mayfield? You don't want to be trying to invest into a player where their ceiling is currently Baker Mayfield. Now, thank you. Of course, I really hope that you enjoyed this video. I know probably people didn't because, you know, every time we talk poorly on Justin Fields, we get a lot of hate. But nonetheless, I think if we're going to recap it here, we've had a lot of quarterbacks disappointing. I think you have to hold Zach Wilson. You're not going to be able to get anything for him in trade. I think we could trade Justin Fields and add on a piece to get to Trey Lance. That'd be fantastic. And then in the case of Trevor Lawrence, in theory, it'd be great if you could buy low. Nobody's going to be selling at a massive discount, however. And Tua Tagovailoa, I think it's time to cut bait. I think if we can get a first-round pick in a Superflex league, I would be perfectly fine with that. And yeah, thank you again for supporting the channel. Really hope that y'all enjoyed the video. And I really hope I'm talking to you on Patreon sometime soon, or I see you with the next video, maybe tomorrow.